I know you guys have heard of this phrase, the jack of all trades, but master of none. And at some point in there, in some way, we have been convinced that that means sloppy, that if you aren't a deep, knowledgeable, a pro's pro in one sector, one market, or one topic, that you just aren't that serious and you don't actually have a chance to excel. You just won't win. But in my opinion, that can damage more people than it actually is going to help. Because for a lot of people, the problem is not actually being a generalist, as they're called, but it's also not being a specialist either. The real problem here is not knowing which one you actually are. Drifting back and forth, trying to be both things at once. That's what's actually going to get you into deep waters. By the end of this video, you should have a lot more clarity. Clarity on how you are wired to trade and why going against that is actually holding you back, and how to commit to the way that actually builds your confidence rather than eroding it. So let's say this, at a basic high level, there are two ways that are valid to operate as a trader. You can either go vertically or you can operate horizontally. Those vertical traders, they're specialists. You focus on mainly one market or at least a very tight cluster of them. You might look for a specific setup at a specific time with a specific pattern. One structure, one rhythm, one environment. You know it so well, in fact, that you know when it's healthy or if it's dangerous, when no opportunity exists or it's actually filled with it. So your edge comes from your depth within those exact waters. You stay patient, and when those stars align, that's when you press it. You execute, and then you act with heavy, heavy conviction. But a horizontal trader is going to operate in a completely different world. This is where you're going to apply a similar lens across many different markets. And you aren't just married to one single asset. You're always scanning for opportunity wherever it might pop up. You understand things like volatility, positioning, and when narratives are shifting, the risk profiles, and the sentiment. And then you allow those things to guide where you're going to be deploying your capital. Your actual edge comes from that breadth. You're very likely to be adaptable, more flexible, and rarely come across as desperate for action. If a market dries up, there's really no need to panic. You'll just rotate to another opportunity. So look, and here's the really important part about this. Both of these approaches can work, and both can absolutely fail if undertaken by the wrong type of person. I see people arguing about this all the time. They're trying to force onto others what works for them personally. And that other person might be the exact wrong one for the approach that you take. And let's take it another notch deeper. Many of you won't even fail due to the choice of this style. You'll fail because you won't even commit to one long enough. And this is where things can get real dicey. Many of you will get stuck right in the middle. You remember that mid-curve meme? Low IQ on the left, high IQ on the right. But if you're stuck in the middle, it's like you just know enough to get yourself really hurt. And the same applies here. See, one day you're a specialist, but maybe you sit in a trade too long. New information comes and you end up with a poor result. So you convince yourself that I was just too stubborn with this approach. So the next day comes and we tell yourself, oh, I'm a generalist now. And then maybe you start to abandon trades much too early. You end up chasing movement all around. You start to rationalize impulsive decisions and deem it flexibility. So sometimes this switching can occur day to day, but even sometimes it can happen mid-trade. You are changing your entire identity just to justify the reactive emotions you're feeling in that exact moment. And this is not a strategy. This is just pure cope, my friend. That middle ground is where your trading dreams will go to die. It's literal no man's land. You're not exactly deep enough to develop some true conviction, but also not broad enough to move freely. You are just plain reacting. And of course, there will be some anomalies that have been operating at a very high level, and they understand how to bounce between these modalities. I'm not saying that doesn't exist at all. But if you're new or intermediate, that dead zone can cost you years. So at least early on in this journey, you need to clarify which side of this boat are you on. And this is something that I've dealt with the hard way. For most of my career, I traded very horizontally. 50 to 60 futures markets up at all times, rotating between wherever the action was. I applied my style and my risk management absolutely wherever I could. And it worked well. But I was always getting caught up trying to think that I needed to become a specialist in something. I would say to myself that like, if I could just crush the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or gold, I could just absolutely annihilate that one, be really great, and I'd be all set. I wouldn't have to watch all these other things. But what would happen to me every time? I would, of course, start over trading all of it. I would start coming up with stories and justifications to get in there and do my work. And I would force that action, and I'd lose that objectivity that made me good in the first place. So this wasn't really a discipline problem per se. It was more of an alignment issue. I would keep trying to trade like somebody that I wasn't, rather than leaning into my personal skill set. And it took me many years to realize that my style, my breadth across markets was actually just okay. It was fine. But hey, on the flip side, I definitely know traders that absolutely need to be specialists. They thrive on the idea of just being in one market. They can go in and see the nuance in the data that so many others, like myself, will miss completely. And their confidence comes exactly from that repetition and lack of variety. But when they try to broaden out, when they try to expand, that's when they lose their edge. They feel scatterbrained and they're second guessing every move and every action. So they start assuming something is wrong with them when nothing really is. They're just doing the same thing. They're abandoning what works for them. And for what really? There's a book that I like called Range by David Epstein. I highly recommend you guys go read that if you like this type of stuff. But it really plays on this well. It resonated so much with me and my trading. It kind of breaks the mold or the myth on generalists being lacking something, and actually kind of goes around the way of saying how powerful it is to actually be one. See, some people do win big by specializing on something very early in life. Prototypical guy is Tiger Woods. He was golfing since he was 2 years old and never stopped. But others win by going wide first and then specializing down the road. In the book, one of the examples was Roger Federer, who played all sorts of other sports with hand-eye and team and singles and coordination and explosiveness. And he didn't even get into tennis at all until he was in his teenage years, in which he then kind of took over and started to specialize. So Epstein in this book is suggesting that generalists don't fail because of a lack of skill per se. They fail because they try to force specialization before they're actually ready to do so. See, the danger is not actually in the style itself. It's pretending that you don't actually have one. So here's the questions that you need to be asking yourself. Do you gain confidence by seeing and doing the same thing repetitively? Or do you do it by recognizing similar patterns across a bunch of different environments? Do you feel grounded and in a flow state when you're waiting for a perfect setup in a perfect market? Or do you like to move your capital around and deploy it in different areas when conditions are changing? When you start to lose, do you start to spiral because you've lost trust in your read on a single market? Or is it because you don't trust in your abilities to continually find things elsewhere? These answers are going to matter more than a specific strategy that you're employing. And I want to hammer this point home for you. To succeed at trading, you do not need to be like somebody else. Stop fighting who you already are. Pick your lane and commit to it. Commit to whatever feels right. Within that framework, start to build your confidence. And it doesn't have to be forever. This isn't the end game, but long enough to do what feels right and at least test that theory. Fastest way to your ruins to the end of your career is oscillating between these identities, especially every time that the market is starting to make you uncomfortable. When you finally find that alignment, every decision, every market is going to feel a little bit simpler. It's going to make a little bit more sense. And of course, this will then help your mistakes spiral into other bad things less often. Then your confidence and your abilities can start to compound on each other. But once you do that, whether you are a specialist or a generalist, it stops being a weakness and becomes the very foundation that everything else is being built on. So try to be honest about how you're actually operating. Once you do that, the game will change completely. All right, so guys, if you like that video, please like and subscribe. I am trying to put out as many videos as I can to help people because stuff is getting crazy out there. If you like talking about this psychology, mindset, things like this, join the free Discord in the link below. It should be right in the description. We got over 1,000 people in there right now. Awesome conversation happening at all times. And remember, this is not investment advice. It's just for entertainment purposes only. I hope it helps you at least a little bit. And if this video resonated with you at all, whether you're a generalist or a specialist, throw a comment below. I want to see what types of people are out there. Who else can I help? All right. Have a good day.